near and dear to my heart, intimacy, Tantra, and how slowing down can help us access even more pleasure. Be sure to stay till the very end of this episode because we have a special meditation that's going to help you dive even deeper. We are here with Niyaso Carter. Welcome to the show, Niyaso.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's dive in and let's talk about Tantra and intimacy. What exactly... Tantra has this huge misconception, and I'd love to just start. Can you clarify for us a little bit about what is Tantra and kind of the misconceptions around what people think it is?
So Tantra is a word that originated in ancient India. It's a Sanskrit word. And Tantra at that time meant the practice of coming into union with God or source or the divine, whatever word you want to use. And what made the people that were in the sects of Tantra, that were in the tradition of Tantra, different back in that day, was that they also included sexuality as a path to God or to the divine. Whereas during that time in ancient India, all the other traditions, the Hindu, the Buddhist, had celibacy as a basic tenet of requirement when you wanted to be spiritual. And so Tantra has, in this day nowadays, moved into America and into the West. And there it has been appropriated by a number of different groups of people and has become to mean everything from group sex to spiritual sex to conscious sex, and all different practitioners are doing different things under that term. But it doesn't change what the original meaning was.
This is such an important topic as far as intimacy goes. And, you know, we think about Tantra as this, sometimes a lot of people think about Tantra as this weird, aloof thing that's kind of out there. But really, something that everybody can understand is intimacy. And that's something I'd really like to talk about in today's episode is, what is intimacy? How do we get more intimately connected with ourselves and with our partner? And I would love for you to just kind of kick us off in that direction about what is intimacy to you? What does that look like between couples? And how can we start to dive deeper into intimacy?
Beautiful question, because Tantra and intimacy, you could almost say they're synonymous. And intimacy seems to be this kind of vague thing that if you ask a man what is intimacy, I can almost guarantee you he would have trouble answering. And a woman would probably say, it's when I feel really, really connected to my partner. But it really is a good idea to kind of examine that word a little bit. And more importantly, how do we get there? So to me, intimacy is the ability to communicate vulnerably, the ability to know and trust yourself enough that you can say it how it is. You can actually say, oh, that feels great, but I think if you did it a little bit lighter, this very same touch, it might feel even better. That's one form of intimacy. Saying, I'm afraid right now is another form of intimacy. And of course, being able to be received by your partner. It's a big topic, intimacy. So maybe steer me a little bit in a direction.
Yeah, I love that you're talking about communicating vulnerably. And one thing that I've seen a lot of people struggle with is that they think, oh, now I have to talk about every single little thing that is going on. But, you know, verbal communication is a big piece, but also body communication and directing your partner where you want them to go and vulnerably communicating in that way. That's a whole other piece. Don't you agree?
I do. And really, that's, if I'm going to be blunt, communicating with your body is just being honest, being authentic, saying and being how it is. So in that case, intimacy would be not acting like the sex kitten, say, for a woman if she's not feeling it. That would be honest, intimate, and authentic. But sometimes I really do believe partners need their words, because in order to bring things in the direction of where the joy is, where the opening is, where the heartfelt relaxation is, sometimes words are necessary.
Absolutely. And I'm curious, Luis, what your thoughts are on this from the male perspective.
I'm kind of a different type of male as far as mainstream men go. And I think that a lot of the men listening to the show, they're probably sensitive men or men who are looking to get that edge on how to be more in touch with their partner, whether it's a man or a woman or a transgender person. They're looking to really get more in touch with themselves and how to really reach within themselves to direct that outwards and connect with someone else. And that's really why I wanted to bring you on here, Niyaso, because I think a lot of us need help on getting in touch with our sensitivity, especially when it comes to touch and connection. What do you think are some top ways for men or for women to get in touch with their bodies and get in touch with that intimate aspect of self and sensuality?
Well, one of my top and key tips to men, if they want to have a love life that's amazing, is to be willing to ask questions of their partner. So I'm going to speak in terms of heterosexual couples just for simplicity's sake. So I just really encourage men to be prepared to say, how does that feel? And not just superficially, like the woman needs to feel like the man is curiously interested and is not going to react unfavorably if she has a comment about something that could be better. So if a man asks questions and then the woman, a lot of women aren't that good at knowing what it feels like because nobody's had practice. So sometimes women will say, well, I don't know. The right thing for a man to do who really wants to open up things sexually and intimately would be to go, well, take some time. Ask your body how it feels. Let your body do the talking. See what comes up if you don't worry about saying the right thing. Those would be things a very mature man might say.
Oh, I love that you said that piece of take some time, because that alone is such an important missing piece that, we get into the bedroom oftentimes in our culture. This is how it's done in movies. It's hot. It's sexy. You're rushing through. You're ripping off each other's clothes. You're, all of a sudden the guy's on top, and then like, within 30 seconds of the footage, the whole thing is over, and they're just like, oh God, that was so great. But yeah. but we aren't taught or even shown that taking time and allowing the space can be so much sexier and so much juicier and real and intimate and passionate, and it allows us the opportunity to really know what is it that we want moment by moment.
I'm so glad you jumped on that one, because that's one of my pet stories, is when you watch movie scenes and just how unrelated to real life those scenes actually are. And that's not even mentioning pornography, which is a whole other conversation. But the average movie scene has people literally believe they ought to be that way too. And because there isn't any healthy sex visuals available really, and that's kind of why I do the work I do. I did create a movie with healthy sex scenes in it, and I'm going to create more, is that people don't even think about it. It's like they just kind of go, well, I saw that in the movies. I saw all these sex scenes. Something around like that is how it should be going. And nothing could be further from the truth. Taking time, asking questions, feeling your body, asking what would feel better, and waiting for the body to supply that answer is actually the real healthy sexuality, or the real path to the most amazing sex.
Oh, I love that you have that DVD that you put out there too about watching real people making real love, and that's right. Such an important piece that we don't get to see or access a lot in our culture. I was grateful to come across your DVD many years ago when I was still in the explorative stages myself, and kind of was surprised to see something out there like that, which is great.
Great. I'm so glad you did. And what we have to realize is that as babies, we are pre-verbally, we're like biologically designed to copy what we see, more so than to copy what we're told to do. And so we constantly observe our environment. And because there's an absence of healthy visuals around sexuality, the only visuals we have, that's what we go by. And the whole process happens quite unconsciously. And that's why having these conversations is so important. And of course, creating positive visuals is one of the things that I'm in the business of doing. And I'm also talking about, don't take what you see out there or what you read even in magazines as the ultimate truth on how sexuality should look like.
So while we're on the subject of sexuality, and you two have really been connecting on that piece and in agreement, I want to ask, from your perspective, Niyaso, and in the work that you've done, what are some really valuable pointers, especially for men, in regards to how they can slow down and connect with their partner? And then after that, I want to ask you one more question too.
Mm-hmm. Well, again, if we're going to let go of modeling ourselves from porn flicks or even mainstream movies, it actually just takes courage. The courage to believe that the slowing down is going to lead somewhere good. The trust, a mature man will trust himself to be the God, the divine, the giver of pleasure. And he will therefore not rush through it, and he will risk making a mistake, so to speak. And that's why I encourage couples to speak to this at some point in their relationship. It doesn't have to be right in the bedroom. It can be at any given time, is to just talk about, what really feels good to us. And, the man might say, sometimes I'm going to experiment with slowing down. Would you be okay with that? Because I think some nice new worlds will open up for us if I do that. I think most women would just go, oh, thank God, that would be wonderful. I think the biggest trouble in sexual relating, again, no role modeling of watching couples talk about it. And so people feel like they should get it right without words. And so I find often that if one partner begins addressing it, there may be resistance on the other side. But if it's done consciously and kindly and consistently, pretty soon the conversation will emerge and things will open up.
I love your insights, and as a male, I find it incredibly helpful to hear this sort of advice. And in a moment, I'm going to ask something from you, Kamala, too, because early on when I first started dating, I was just incredibly afraid to talk about, hey, I'm interested in you and I think you're a fantastic woman. I would love to go on a date with you, right? And then as we grow in our ability to be more open and exposed, that becomes fairly easy. But then to get to the place of, I'd like to connect with you intimately, or I would love to make love to you, and get to those spaces of talking that way are incredibly challenging and something that I struggled with as a man. And I'm hearing from you, Niyaso, that can just be so incredibly healthy. And it's definitely something that, I found in my work and work with couples. Kamala, do you want to add anything about that? Like for you as a woman, or for you as your work as an intimacy coach and working with men and women, how beneficial that is?
Well, there's something so amazing about when we drop into the moment, into our bodies, and decide to open ourselves, that we become magnetic. And it becomes easy for people to connect with us, to be drawn to us. And I've seen miracles happen when the body is open, when you're allowing your eyes to open and your heart to open and your smile to open to people, the way that people are just drawn to that. It's wild to see people flock in. Have you experienced that too, Niyaso? Just this amazing magnetism.
Yeah, in fact, I sometimes give this exercise to women, actually to men and women, that I give them the exercise to actually go shopping in the local supermarket or health food store or whatever, and to consciously feel their sexual nature, but in the most sweetest, delightful way, not in a flirty, everybody please look at me way, but actually very privately, for a woman to walk and just know, I am the goddess divine. My sexuality is a gift from the divine, and I'm going to walk into the supermarket with that consciousness, with that awareness, and how different that feels. And you talk about the magnetism. It may turn a couple of heads, but it's not designed, you don't have to dress. You can be in a baggy sweatshirt and sweatpants it's really a shift in who you're letting yourself be. And that's kind of an important assignment both to men and women in sort of the privacy of their own awareness, because we're all shamed at some point in our upbringing for being overly sexual, even if people often don't remember that. But in the Western culture, there's very few adults walking around now who weren't shamed for their sexuality as little ones.
Oh, I absolutely love that exercise and how you framed it too, because there's this huge difference that we aren't taught, that there's this difference of putting your sexuality out there, like what I can get from other people. What kind of power can I gain over other people? And then there's the resting in our sexuality and being plugged into who we are and just feeling the sensual nature of everything around us, of the vegetables in the store. Yes. You're touching them. Yeah. I mean, everything can be so sensual when we're dropped into that. And that sensuality can bleed into every part of our lives. And then you bring that to the bedroom. Oh, God, that's
right.
I want to jump in here and ask about long-term relationships, and what are some ways that couples have been together for some time? What are some ways that they can kind of revitalize or refresh their intimate life, and connect again? And I mean that on a sexual level, especially.
Right. So first off, I want to mention that there is sort of an assumption that, sex is good during the honeymoon and then it's expected to drop off and get kind of uninteresting, and that you have to, a lot of couples then think, well, now we need the toys and now we need the kind of high tech version of sex. But I want to just affirm that the natural course of a loving long-term couple that keeps exploring is that sex gets better and better and better over time. That is definitely how the development would work. I'm not saying it'll be sizzling hot every single time, but that thing we're talking about, that relaxation, that trust in a good relationship actually builds, and it actually increases the ability to feel and sense in the sexual realm as well. So, but in order to have that, a couple needs to consciously want that. I usually just say to people, a good sex life is not a matter of luck. It is a matter of understanding the ingredients that it's going to take to get there, and very lightly and playfully. This doesn't have to be serious kind of processing, but to just continuously learn to open. I mean, it is, to me, a committed relationship that wants to have the sexuality be good. That's a spiritual practice. It's like practicing meditation. It's something you, on an ongoing basis, you've got to go, we know there's more depth. We know there's more opening. And we know that if we trust and follow our intuitive guidance, we'll get there.
Yeah, this is awesome, because this is something that Luis and I talk about in terms of sensation sex versus connection. And when we're chasing around the sensation or the orgasm, or, you're moving really fast, there's a lot of friction, or you gotta keep up, gotta chase around the stimulation. When we're approaching sex that way, there's no connection, really. The only connection is to the sensation itself.
Yes.
And there's a completely different experience when we're focused on the connection, because then there's no place that we're trying to rush to get to. There's not a goal involved. It's just about arriving in each moment and being with what's there and what wants to come through.
I'd like to get vulnerable here too and share that recently Kamala told me, there's some things that you've been doing with me physically that when you do them are really focused around physical stimulation, and it triggers a part of my brain that just doesn't really go into that space of like connecting with you and feeling you and being really fully, completely like sensing you as a whole organism, instead just kind of singly focused.
Yeah.
We talked about that, and it was so great to have her open up. And I'm saying this because I know that oftentimes people, we talk on this show, and a lot of times we talk about what's working, and I want to let you guys know as listeners that I'm vulnerable. I'm susceptible to this sometimes, and I don't imagine it'll be the first time that Kamala will share with me, hey, this isn't working. Can we do more of this or that? And after that conversation, we just had an amazing, intimate connection after that, where there was just a lot of touch, a lot of slowing down. And as a man, and I'm sure that if you're listening and you're a woman or a man, one of the things you know is that when you're just tuned in and it's like, you know exactly where to place your hand, you know exactly how to breathe, you eye gaze in the perfect way, and then you kind of move to wherever you need to. It's like a very beautiful, soft dance, and you're listening to this music that's being created by both of you. And that conversation doesn't sound like it would be sexy, but it was incredibly sexy.
Yeah, I totally understand.
Do you have some tips or rules or kind of guidelines that you've discovered that really help couples have that sort of conversation? Because here's the thing, is sometimes we have that conversation and it doesn't go so well.
Right.
And we don't want to do it again. And I know I've discovered some guidelines and I teach it. But Niyaso, you're the professional on this. So what are your ideas or things that you've discovered that really help that conversation work well?
Keep it in the positive. It's always best to, I teach all of my couples that come to my workshops and or private coaching about nonviolent communication. And that's maybe not such a great term, but it's a term coined by Marshall Rosenberg, who wrote the books about it, and it's very effective communication tools. So I want all couples to learn effective communication. And what that really means in a nutshell is to make I statements and to speak about what you would like rather than what is not working. So for example, it would be like, I like your touch, and sometimes I'm not able to receive it that well. And I wonder if you would be willing to, I'm going to say in this example, maybe touch me a little more slowly and a little more lightly. And I think that might feel better. Would you be willing to try that? So it's both keeping it positive, as in making suggestions what might work, and also being humbled by not saying you ought to do this, but rather, would you be willing to try this experience and let's see how it feels?
Here's something too that I found is, instead of focusing on what's not working, exactly what you're saying, Niyaso, is also just saying, I really love it when you do this. Can you do more of this? Or, I haven't shared this with you, but here's a little something that I really enjoy, and I'm wondering if you'd be willing to try it. That works incredibly well in regards to getting our needs met and being able to ask for it.
Beautiful. Yes, absolutely. And, sometimes people don't know what's going to feel good because they haven't really given themselves permission to kind of question what might feel even better. So one of my kind of key questions that I give people, is there anything that we could do even a tiny little bit differently that might feel even better? And that's the question I give to men and to women, to both ask their partner, but to also ask themselves.
That's a really great tip to incite curiosity. And I want to add a little to that, Niyaso, if I can.
Good. Yes, please.
One of the things that I've worked with couples, and all couples have told me they really like it, is when you're playing that game of curiosity, add in this piece of, and when I enjoy something, I'll make a louder moan, or I'll make a little bit more sound so that you know that I'm enjoying it.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Well, one question that I've gotten from clients that I would love to hear, I think it would be an important question to address, so I want to ask you.
Okay.
What do you think about when people are have a hard time getting aroused, or men have a hard time staying hard, or women have a hard time having an orgasm or staying aroused. And they know exactly what needs to be done, and so they do it the same way every single time, which Tantra invites us to continue to change things up, continue to do new things. So I'm curious what you would say when your clients ask you that.
Well, I would think it would be very case specific, because there's different things going on in each single dynamic between people. So there isn't really a blanket answer to that. But generally speaking, the first piece is relaxing and asking your body what it needs. So that, I find often, obviously it's something to do with age and health in case of a man not being able to have an erection. But more often, I find there's an emotional piece in the mix where somehow people aren't trusting and relaxed enough to discover, what is my heart doing in this mix? What is my body doing in this mix? Because I'm not a proponent of Viagra, for example, because I do believe that more often than not, if the heart connection is cleared up, in other words, any kind of possible form or urge that might be lingering or fear of not performing properly, if all of that stuff gets addressed verbally in a conversation, often it just kind of opens things right up. Because one of my favorite little things to say is that honesty is the greatest aphrodisiac. And we already spoke to the fact that, of course, honesty has to be handled with kindness and vulnerability. So it's not just, I hate how you touch me, but it rather is, I'd like to, what a man might say is, I'd like a little room to explore what would happen if I don't go with our status quo of how we do things. And if I would, just explore how do I find my turn on? And same for the woman, of course, having trouble achieving orgasm is not a new conversation, but more often than not, it has to do with her finding her trust in the relationship, in her body, in her femininity. And that takes slowing down and taking time.
Yeah, that's a really beautiful answer. And I love how it's not cookie cutter. This is the one way for everyone. And I really agree with you about it takes a discovery process. And a big piece of it is just, okay, I come up against something I'm ashamed of or I'm afraid about, or there's something here. And being willing to just breathe into it in the moment, even in the bedroom, especially in the bedroom, breathe into it in the moment, express it in some way, even if it's not verbal, and allow it to be there, give space to it, because all the things that we're ashamed of and we're afraid of, the bedroom is one of the biggest places that they can come up, and it doesn't seem like that it should be that way. Like, oh, the bedroom is for things to get just sexy and, everybody's having this wild orgy or whatever, but it really, that's the best time for people to be real, be vulnerable, and to bring those things up.
Right. And what I usually explain to people is that in the bedroom, if we want to have this expanded, amazing, orgasmic sexuality, the reason that's the time when the vulnerabilities come up is because we open and relax more deeply than normal. It's kind of like this paradox that in order to open that much, let our energy flow that unrestrainedly, of course, everything that we keep under wraps will pop up along with that expansion. And so it's good for couples to understand that there's going to be stuff coming up. That's just the name of the game. Or otherwise you're going to be stuck to a very limited road, in the track sexuality that is going to get boring with time for sure.
This is kind of unrelated, but when I see those movie scenes where the woman's just laying there and she's not expressing herself, there's nothing that makes me more upset than watching that, because being in the bedroom is such an amazing opportunity to be who we are. How we are naked. We are showing someone the deepest parts of ourselves. And so I just keep wanting to encourage people to bring up what's there and to not let shame make you shrink back, because we're all weirdos. We all have stuff. We all have shames. And so I think I'm curious about what other pieces that you're passionate about that you want to make sure our listeners have before we end the call.
I mean, one thing you've addressed already is to have eye contact sometimes during lovemaking, so that it isn't that disconnected, just focused on physical senses experience. And you spoke to that. And again, I kind of just say to couples, it's okay if you make your love life, you just let it go how it does, and you have your routines. You've learned what feels good. But once a week, make a play date, I call it, where you have more than just 20 minutes, maybe an hour or two assigned to just try something different. Read an article first in a magazine. I mean, my audio program is usually a really good kind of, here, we could do one exercise out of this audio and see then how it changes us, opens us, triggers us, makes us get new ideas. So it's not really that you need any one specific thing necessarily, but the willingness to explore new things on a regular basis would be my kind of key guideline to any couple.
So Niyaso, as we wrap up, one of the things that I felt would be really special that I think would be a gift from you. Could you guide us through just a short little meditation to help us get in touch with our bodies, and something that either we can do by ourselves or with our partner, but something that that helps people really kind of get in touch? How do you feel about that?
Sure, absolutely.
Love it. So I'll let you take it away, and I'm going to just follow. Kamala and I are going to follow along and just do as you ask.
Okay. And this is something that you could do. I mean, obviously, we're going to do it right now together, but it's also something you can do for yourself as you maybe enter a love play moment. So close your eyes for a moment. Not if you're driving. And if you're driving, you can do this with eyes open. And let your breath happen naturally and deeply and easily. Allowing the breath to happen how it wants to, and not forcing it to be deep, but rather just an allowing of letting it gradually get maybe just a little bit deeper. And then let yourself become aware of the fact that you have a body that has lungs that inhale and exhale quite beautifully on its own. And the same way as the breath happens quite beautifully on its own, the body, along with the breath, has sort of an undulation-like rhythm that follows the breathing. And it's so tiny that a person looking from the outside might not sense it. But if you allow your body just a tiny little bit of movement along with the inhale and the exhale, any movement that feels good to you, you will notice that that undulation is just something that's running in the background when you're not paying attention anyway. And right now, you're just allowing your body to have a very gentle undulation. And what that means is your spine's maybe moving back and forth a little. Maybe you feel like you're a snake slithering through the forest floor. Or maybe the image of a dolphin jumping up and down through waves is an image that speaks to you more. And as you breathe relaxedly and allow whatever undulation movement your body wants to make, I invite you to slowly let your awareness travel down into your pelvic area. And if there wants to be an ever so gentle, effortless motion of the pelvis, you can allow that too. But if there's no actual physical movement and it's just a movement of energy, that's beautiful as well. So just allowing that awareness that you're bringing into your pelvis to generate maybe a tingling, maybe a warmth, maybe a sense of relaxation. So see what happens if I say to you, allow your pelvis to relax. Allow your perineum to relax. Allow your vagina, your clitoris, or your testicles and your penis to just relax into this warm sensation of goodness. Because a lot of us hold tension in our pelvic area, again, related to often having been shamed as little ones. And to kind of just send a message of goodness into our genitals. You're beautiful. You're conscious. You carry great power. You have a gift of awakening the whole body into ecstasy, sending messages of affirming goodness into our pelvic area, into our womb for the women, into our prostate, testicles for the man, can have a very powerful opening effect. And then from that place of goodness and warmth and tingling and permission of feeling the pelvis, still letting the body undulate if it wants to, just allowing whatever warmth now wants to travel throughout the body from the pelvis to happen without, again, needing to effort. Just a breathing, allowing to happen naturally and deeply and easily. Allowing the brain to relax, not having to analyze or understand, but just handing over control to the wisdom, the innate, always available wisdom of our bodies. And this is how I would invite couples to begin a lovemaking session. And if you liked what I said or any piece of it, you could even guide each other, maybe alternating. One day the man guides the woman into this as a preamble to lovemaking, and one day the woman guides the man into it as a preamble. And you don't have to use my words. If you got a sense of the meaning of it, you can completely adjust and use whatever words feel like they help you open. And what I'll say as a parting word with that is, I encourage couples to let each other know what phrases and words are the magic key to opening for them, and to invite that those words be spoken. So for example, for me, if a guy says to me, my partner says, just relax, it's like the magic aphrodisiac. I just get permission to not try and effort. My body relaxes. It relaxes better than I would relax on my own. Now I can tell myself that, and I do. If my partner fails to say it, I know it works for me to say it to myself. Just relax. Your body will know how to open. But if it comes from my partner, it's just pure magic.
Thank you so much for that meditation, that journey. How powerful. I know that's my favorite kind of foreplay right there. Really beautiful. We've been here with Niyaso Carter. It's been so enlivening and enlightening to have you on the show. Thank you so much for being here, Niyaso.
Thank you so much, Niyaso.
I am so honored to have gotten to speak to such aware people like yourselves. It's beautiful, and I bet you do just awesome work.
You've been listening to the Thriving Launch podcast. For books and resources related to today's episode, make sure to head over to thrivinglaunch.com. We'll see you there. Be sure to check out tomorrow's episode where we talk with Dr. Joel Furman about how to disease-proof your kids.